so discouraged. I've been working on this project for ages, but just something's not right, and I'm starting to wonder if it's even worth it anymore. How do I know if it's time to just give up? Oh, I'm sorry, Bookish Bear. I've definitely been there before. And if you've been there before, or if you are currently there, then this video is for you. As writers, we pour our blood, sweat, and tears into our stories. They're our babies, and we want to see them succeed. But there have still been times where I just have a story that is not working. And I think every writer at some point has or will have to ask themselves, is this story still worth it at this point? Is it the end of the world if I decide to shelve this project and move on? If not, if that's an option, how do I know when it's time to do that? In this video, I'm going to share with you a few different signs that it might be time to move on and work on a different story and shelve the one that you're currently working on. And just allowing yourself to entertain the idea of shelving or even just kind of putting on permanent hiatus until further notice a story can be incredibly freeing in and of itself, because it means you're no longer binding yourself to that story. So if you're here today just because you're just considering shelving a story, let me first of all say, I'm proud of you. That is a really difficult point to reach as an author, where you are willing to kind of step back and look at a story and be like, hey, maybe it's time for me to move on. That's a really hard point to reach. So good on you for even being at the point where you can consider that. But that being said, I know that considering it and deciding on whether or not you should shelve something are two very different things. So let's get right into the 3 signs that it's time for you to shelve or otherwise put on hiatus your project. So part of the reason, if not the reason, that I'm making this video is because I'm currently dealing with a story that I have decided to temporarily shelve until I'm at a place where I can actually revisit it and rewrite it. Part of that is because of this point that I am going to talk about first, and that is, it might be time to shelve your project if you no longer get any enjoyment out of writing or planning the book that you're working on. Now, it's completely normal to have parts of your story, for me it's always the middle, that you just have to write to get the draft done and you don't particularly enjoy writing them. It's normal to have bouts of being frustrated with your plotting, and oh boy, is it normal to have bouts of just hating your stupid characters. Like, they are so dumb sometimes, but all of that's normal. But you should still, while you're working on that and those unpleasant things, have scenes or parts of the story that you're still looking forward to doing, that you're still daydreaming about when you take a shower. And if you've gotten to a point where you don't really have any of those left and it's just all a drudgery and not fun anymore, then it's probably time to shelve the story, at least for now. And again, like I said, this is a problem that I'm currently facing with my current project, which I'm calling Project Fantasy Mafia, for lack of a better phrase. That's what I'm going to call it. Because I started out really excited to work on it and I had all these cool ideas, but just somewhere along the way, and for not really any particular reason, I just lost all of my excitement to work on it. I've been working on it for like, I don't know, probably about a year, but since I was in college for most of that time and also had some major life changes, I didn't really get a chance to get a lot of momentum, and it dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And that's part of why this second point is so important, and I think it's something you should also consider if you're considering shelving your project. And my second point is, it might be time to shelve your project if you have been working on the first draft for over a year. This is partly a personal thing based on my experience with writing, but I personally think that it is important that you finish the first draft of a story as soon as possible from when you start writing that first draft. This is why I personally take just as much time, if not more time, planning my stories than I usually spend writing them. Because if you spend too much time working on a story, life gets in the way, you lose all your momentum, and that is exactly what happened with Project Fantasy Mafia, and why I've just had to kind of shelve it for now. Because the more time you spend working on that first draft, the farther it's been since you were at the beginning, and the more kind of refreshing yourself you have to do, and you lose a lot of momentum. And there's just something about mentally, if you've been working on something for over a year and you still don't even have that first draft done, this is not counting the planning part. That can be within the year, that's fine. That can take however long you need it to. But if the first draft has taken you more than a year and you're still not done, it's probably time to shelve the project, because it probably means there's something wrong with the plot or the story. Now, there are exceptions to this. I know a lot of you guys have very busy lives and you're juggling jobs and kids, and that's a different situation. But if you've had the ability and times where you've sat down to write the story and just, it's still not just happening, no matter how much you kind of try to carve out time to work on it, just there's something, stuff's happened, whether it's life or just the story, and it's been over a year since you started it, and from the first point, you just don't have any excitement to work on it anymore, it's probably time to shelve it. I get it, it's very hard to try to find time to write stories when we have such busy lives, because most of us, I don't know if any of us currently on this kind of community are full-time authors. I know I'm not, but it is important to try to finish it as soon as possible. That's why things like NaNoWriMo are so popular, because the sooner you get it done, then you have it done, and then you can work on things like refining it and getting it better. Which is why, with a few exceptions, I would say, even if you're busy, even if you have a really busy life, I know it's not feasible for everyone, but if it is at all feasible for you, and it has been a year since you started that first draft and it's not done, it's probably time to shelve the project, unfortunately. Now, that being said, what you can possibly do is revisit the project after you've had some time away and start from the beginning. This is what I'm planning to do with Project Fantasy Mafia, because I discovered as I kind of was dealing through these things, I was like, well, I'm not enjoying working on it anymore, and it's been over a year, and I figured out that part of that was because I was dealing with some major plot holes because of the historical inspired elements in the story. I just can't seem to get away from historical fiction, can I? But because of the historical elements, I had some gaps in my research that were part of the reason why I was struggling so much to get the story written, and part of why I didn't have the plotting quite as fleshed out as I wanted to before I started. And by starting over and having some things worked out, even if you're not a big plotter, I cannot recommend enough that you at least have a roadmap of just some basic points of, this is the gist of what's going to happen in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, especially for Act 2. I cannot stress that enough. If you decide down the road that you want to revisit and restart the project and try again, make sure that you have started over, don't get too attached to the way that the story was before, and have a plan. I cannot emphasize that enough, because I have found that generally the more you have planned, the fewer places you have to get stuck, which means that the sooner you'll get it done, the better you'll keep up your momentum, and the more likely you'll be to get that done within a year, which again is crucial for actually making sure you get that first draft done. So because of that, again, I would recommend starting from scratch if you're going to redo it. Redo your whole plot outline. Sure, some things will stay the same, but don't be afraid to just go ham and change a bunch of stuff. And for that, I actually have a resource that I'm going to recommend for you today. If I can figure out where I set it. I just had it. Oh, it's literally right behind me. So a friend of mine named Courtney, she does all these cool resources for writers. And for Christian writers. And she just published a new book. I have not used it yet, but I really like her other book, A Prayer Book for Writers, and I've taken a glance at it, and I can already tell it looks really good. But I would recommend you get this book, Write Your Book by Courtney Kleefeld, and what it has in it is a bunch of different prompts and activities that you can do to help you work on getting your book drafted and planned. So I would recommend a resource like this. I'll leave these linked in the video description. I would recommend a book like this, or some other worksheet that you create yourself to help you just kind of get back into the groove of it, fall back in love with the story, and start from scratch on the plotting. Because if you decide to revisit it down the road, unless you change something, if it's a project you got stuck on and sick of, it's not going to be any better the second time around. You're going to have to change something. And so I would recommend something like this for sure if you decide that you do want to revisit it, but you need to kind of overhaul some stuff. And again, as part of that, as you're overhauling it, I would set a time goal of about what time you want to have it done. Make sure to include plenty of time for, like, you know, life happens and you're busy. Inevitably, I always think I can get something done faster than I do. I'm looking at you, that project I started a couple days ago that I thought would be done by now. But anyway, I think it is important to, again, second time around, if you want to revisit it, still make sure that you are going to finish it in no more than a year. Just bear that in mind. You don't have to put a ton of pressure on yourself. Just make sure you actually are like, okay, I'm not going to work on as many of my other projects. I'm going to get this draft done.
Hi, I'm Sponsor Bear, and I'm here to tell you all about, well, the section that would be here if we had a sponsor, but we don't have a sponsor yet. So in the meantime, I'm going to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to hopefully boost us in the algorithm and get more people to watch this content. Thanks. Your support means a lot. And to thank you for like, commenting, and subscribing, I'm going to practice, my interpretive dance. Enjoy. Ow. Thanks for watching. Now back to the video.
My last point, and this has to do with a lot of the stuff I talk about on this channel, especially in some of my past videos, is if you're writing a story, if you're working on your novel, and you're wondering if you should shelve it, ask yourself, why am I writing this story? Why did I start writing this story? What is the why behind this story? And I have a video that I did ages ago on stories theme that I'll link down below and in the cards, but you should be able to tell yourself why it is you're writing a story. And for me, with Project Fantasy Mafia, I just got to the point where I was like, I don't really know why I'm writing this story. Like, I know why, because I thought it was a really cool concept and it would be a way to explore some neat themes, but just kind of in my soul, I didn't really get the why anymore, if that makes any sense. Like, you kind of know why, but you've kind of lost some of the theme. And that can be a good reason to shelve it, because every story that you write should have a why. Even if it's just oh, I thought this would be a cool concept, it needs to have some reason behind it. And if you do have a reason behind it, or did have a reason behind it, like in my case, oh, I thought this was a cool concept, but it's really just the concept and it didn't end up kind of having much of a theme in any way, then that can be a sign that it's time to shelve it, because every story starts out as a concept. And for a lot of us, the theme tends to kind of flesh itself out as it goes, especially those of us that write less didactic works than others. And because of that, we eventually reach a point where, at least for me, as I'm kind of getting better at figuring out the themes in my writing, there eventually reaches a point where if the theme is not really there, if you're not really sure what the theme is, and again, it doesn't have to be some over-the-top thing. Themes can be subtle. If there's not really a theme there, then you have to ask yourself, well, why am I writing this? What is the reader going to get out of this? And it doesn't have to be some mega theme, but if you're considering shelving it, that might be a sign that it's time to shelve it. And if you do pick it up later, then that's something to ask yourself. What theme do I want it to be in this story, and how do I incorporate it into the story as I'm replotting and replanning the story?
Oh, so basically, I can re-examine my book, and if I've stopped having the passion to work on it, and it's taken me over a year, and I don't really know why I'm working on it at all anymore, maybe I can just shelve it, move on to other projects, and if I really want to, I can always come back to it later with a fresh start.
That's exactly right, Bookish Bear. And don't worry, it's very discouraging sometimes to have to give up a project and shelve it and move on to something else. But it's a really important part of growing as writers and becoming better writers and better in tune with our skills. All of us have times where we have to decide to move on from something, whether it's a project or something else in life. But better learning when to let go and when something needs to rest for a while, or maybe even rest forever, is important. No time spent working on a writing project is wasted. There's always something you learn, even if you end up shelving the project. But knowing that and getting to a place where you're comfortable in shelving a project, even if you've spent so much time on it, is a really important milestone to reach as a writer. And it's very difficult, but the fact that you're even watching this video and you're at a point where you're like, oh, I would like to know more about that, you should be very proud of yourself, and I'm proud of you, and it's definitely something to be encouraged by, even though it can be discouraging to be like, yeah, maybe it's time to move on. The other encouraging thing is that by moving on from a project that maybe just isn't working out, you're freeing yourself up to work on new projects that might turn out way better than this one ever would. So all of that being said, don't get too discouraged. Make sure to give yourself grace and don't be afraid to move on to the next project and see what God has in store for you there. Remember, we are called to work on the skills that God has given us, work out our faith, and God will guide us and take us where we need to be. And part of that may be story projects that are just a learning experience, and that's okay. God uses all of it for His glory as we follow Him and work out this calling that we call writing. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and happy writing. Bye-bye.